Have you guys ever had a thing where you are looking at figures that you know aren't going to be great, and yet you're still really excited to have them? That's kind of where I am right now. From TakaraTomy and their Robot Masters line of the early 2000s, this is the Robot Master 2-pack of Thundercracker and Skywarp. If you don't know what Robot Masters is, it was a 2005 toy line that effectively was Transformers Classics before Classics. You got a very strange Deluxe Optimus Prime, and you had a new Seeker mold. This whole experiment was essentially we are going to take the G1 Seeker toy, modify it, make it a little bit more of an action figure, and there will be no parts forming. When these guys first came out, people were in a mad dash to grab the Seekers. And then not even 6 months later, the classic Seekers came out. As you can imagine, being basically irrelevant not even a year after they were produced, the Robot Master Seekers have fallen into obscurity, so much so that it's very hard to come by them anymore. And yet when you do, they're almost always boxed, because people were collecting them thinking that they were going to be worth big money one day, unaware about these guys. It's that classic case of everyone thought they were investing in toys, and as always, toys are not something to invest in. It is a market destined to collapse every single time. Even still, as a fan of Thundercracker and Skywarp both, I've always wanted this 2-pack. The only issue is whenever it goes for sale here in the States, they always ask for like $150. This came from Japan, still new in box, granted the box is a little bit rough, plus shipping. This is $20. That was $20, including the fees it cost to get it from one side of the world to the United States. Yeah, these guys are rare, and because, of course, we're in the toy collectors scene in the United States, people assume rare equals valuable, and it just doesn't. Even still, the box is really cool. You can see up here, it is a world transformed, where things are not what they seem. It is a world of the Transformers, a world of heroic Cybertrons and evil Destrons. Very weird to me that the box is almost entirely in English, and yet we're still calling them Cybertrons and Destrons. Transformers on the side, the original Transformers art here on the back, all really cool, but now let's actually open these guys up. Getting these guys out of the box, and my first thing is just how weird they feel. Like, obviously, intense remold of G1 molds, to the point where they're almost unrecognizable. They're pretty short, they're not even as tall as the classic Seekers, and the detailing is a bit strange. You can definitely see this looks a lot more like Thundercracker and Skywarp than the G1 figures did, and with the mission statement being improving the G1 Seeker mold, a mold infamous for how much you had to rip it apart just to transform it, I do think they made a decent effort here. But let's actually take a proper look at these figures. Even though we'll be looking at Thundercracker, keep in mind that these figures are identical in sculpt. So, the head is actually pretty nice. It's pretty small proportionately, but it does capture the Seeker head sculpt very well. You have articulation in the head. Down here in the shoulder, you have up and down and limited side to side due to the transformation joint. You have an elbow and nothing else in the arms. Obviously no waist. There is a ball joint at the hip, but it is limited by its own design. You can see it just clashes into the pelvic bone there. You have an upper leg cut. You have no knees, weirdly enough though, but you do have a toe joint. So you can probably tell these aren't going to be the most articulated of figures. I mean, if you want to get them in a basic firing their guns pose or just have them standing there, it definitely works. But the lack of knees especially really does hinder these guys in any attempt to get a more proper pose going. Even still, I do really enjoy the overall presentation, mostly because I like the colors used here. The very distinct purple for Skywarp, the chewy blue for Thundercracker. These are good looking figures, even once you have to factor in the very odd proportions. Best way I can put it is, these figures feel like the child versions of Thundercracker and Skywarp, thinking about how cool it will be when they grow up and get to look just like the classics versions of the mold. And as you can see, yeah, these guys are very short, closer to Scout than Deluxe class. But I would also argue they have more moving components and heft to them than even the classics mold does. So there is value here. It's just put in different places, not in clever engineering, but just in the sheer density of the figures themselves. And again, because I'm a sycophant, I have to say it, I love how these four look together. It's even better when you put the Earthrise, Thundercracker, and Skywarp in, and you basically get the world's weirdest family photo. But why am I putting so much precedence on the Robot Master guys compared to the classics and then to the Earthrise? It's because the classic Seeker mold was made after Takara realized that this was as good as they could get, trying to re-engineer the original mold, so they had to start over. If it wasn't for this Seeker, we probably would never get the classic Seeker mold. And without the classic Seeker mold, we definitely don't get those Earthrise guys. And that's important because the Seeker mold from Classics is one of the most used and most beloved Transformers figures of all time. And there would honestly be an argument to be made that if Robot Masters didn't exist, Classics itself wouldn't exist. Keep in mind, it was made just to be a filler line to wait for the movie to come out. And all the great designs to come from it, the Bumblebee, the Mirage, the Optimus, the Megatron, the Seekers, all of these were made on the backs of TakaraTomy failing to make use of the G1 molds. So, they had to make new molds, and those new molds were spectacular, leading to the longest lasting Transformers line of all time, that being Classics into Universal into Generations. Yeah, all those are the reasons why these Seekers are so important to the history of Transformers, to the history of these characters and their toys, and to my own very weird niche interests of Blue Jet and Purple Jet are boyfriends. Kind of like in my Armada Starscream video, I do want to show the transformation of these guys just because there's not many videos of it out there. And here's what's awesome. Here's what the Robot Master's instructions look like. That is better than Masterpiece directions these days, so this is going to be a pretty quick process. Since we showed articulation on Thundercracker, we're going to show the transformation using Skywarp. First thing we're going to do is take out the null rays, and then you're going to flip the head around, doop, there we are, and raise up this cockpit piece. At the same time, there's a hinge here in the back that we're going to move down, and then that's going to allow us to move the chest up. You're going to have to work these pieces a little bit in tandem to clear that pelvic piece, but it will get there eventually. And then we're going to fold the cockpit all the way up. There we are. So now we have at least the front bit of the jet ready to go. From there, we're going to look at the hands. Hands are going to be brought up, doop, and doop. And then we are going to just spin them around, going around town like that, and then we're going to lower the fists. It actually looks like I am going to need to flip them again real quick. There we go. So basically, the shoulder and this arm need to form just one continuous segment there. Once that is done, we'll be able to flip the wings back and fold the arms up, and that's what's going to form the back of the jet. I'm sure there's a more technical term to what this part of the jet's called, but I'm going to call it the back of the jet. Boop. And up. There we are. And then we can clip the cockpit in place. Wings are in place. That's just going to leave the legs. Legs are going to get folded up and then sent down on sliders. Connect right here. And then bring down the tail wings. Make sure I have all my wings in place. There we are. And that is your Robot Master's Seeker. With both our boys in jet mode, I would describe the transformation as being fiddly and loose. It requires a lot of very small panels, and moreover, even though Skywarp holds together pretty well, Thundercracker's feet love to flop out of place. Even still, there are some cool gimmicks in jet mode. For one, opening cockpit, which is something. You have landing gear, which is also always nice to see on a jet. And at the end of the day, these two just look really nice. Like, they're definitely a step above the G1 figure in terms of just being anchored to the cartoon, but I also don't think that these are bad looking jet modes by today's standards. Again, you can definitely see a little bit of classics in them. For kicks, here are all the Thundercrackers together, and all the Skywarps together. Looking at this group together, even though I do prefer the classics and the Earthrise molds as toys, I really enjoy the colors of the Robot Masters Thundercracker and Skywarp a whole lot more. Something about them being a bit brighter and eye-catching helps the Jets, I think. But there's a little bit more to these guys as well. Going back to the null rays, they can actually be put in different parts of the arm. So for instance, you could put it here in the forearm, and now it looks like he's holding a rifle. Or you could put it here on the hand. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. Alongside that, there was a pack-in gimmick for these guys. You see these chromed out panels in the box. If you put them here on the chest, oop, you can hear a snap as they go in. So you put them on, and I don't like how they look. I think it actually does kind of throw off the overall design. But then you can lift the panels up. Ooh, or you could if they weren't stuck. Oh, well, I got it off, but I also pulled it off in the process. But yeah, you open it up, and those are supposed to be missile pods. Because there were a couple times in the G1 cartoon where Starscream or the other Seekers would shoot missiles out of their boobs somehow. So you can do that now. But again, these are chromed and also translucent plastic. And also don't look good on the figure, so that might be a good thing to leave in the side pile. But if all that's not enough for you, just wait until you see what else Takara packed in. They gave you a trading card with blue eyes on Thundercracker and an enamel pin. Truth be told, this is actually a nice pin. I might wear this at like a convention or something. Yeah. You can see these weren't meant to be standout releases, even though they were the final toys in the Robot Master line. At the end of the day, these are going to be Seekers that are forgotten to the dustbin of history. And I think that's sad, because there is a lot of history here. It's just, again, when you're overshadowed so quickly, and you are only released in one market to begin with, these figures get lost, just like anything in history can get lost very quickly if no one takes the time to actually take note of it. These are not perfect figures, far from it. They are oddities at best. At this point, they're more like knickknacks than proper Transformers. But I can't deny that I love having them. I think every Transformers fan should have the ability to experience this mold at least once, especially if you're like me and have a huge amount of love for the classic Seeker mold. It's crazy to see just how much crossover there is between transformation schemes, design identities, and overall design ideas. I think these are phenomenal little side projects in the grand history of Transformers, and maybe, just maybe, a video like this might make you want to go check out some of those Robot Masters figures, because they had some pretty cool ideas.